Hi there, geometry students. This is Miss Hefty here. We are in our last section, 2-8, which is dealing with angle relationships. So I'm going to go through a number of theorems. We need to understand these theorems, and then in the upcoming chapters we're going to use these theorems to help us solve our proofs. The first theorem is called the supplement theorem. The supplement theorem states that if you have two angles forming a linear pair, then they're supplementary. So let's take a look here for just a minute. If I have angle 1 and angle 2 making a linear pair, they're going to make a straight line. Straight lines are 180 degrees, so then 1 and 2 add to 180 degrees. So what I'm doing here is kind of a paragraph proof. I'm explaining how they come up with the theorem. I'm not writing a 2-column proof with the statements and the reasons. Again, you're just going to need to understand the theorems. You aren't going to have to memorize them, so I'm not going to say, hey, what does the supplement theorem say? You just need to know that if you have two angles that form a linear pair, they equal 180. Complement theorem says, if the non-common sides of two adjacent angles form a right angle, then the angles are complementary angles. And so what they're saying here is, if I have two angles, here are my two angles, and the two non-adjacent sides, that would be this side and this side, form a right angle, then they're going to add to, they're going to be complementary, so they're going to add up to 90 degrees. And you guys see that, how that makes a right angle? And right angles are 90 degrees, so then those two angles will add to 90 degrees. Our next theorem says congruent supplement theorem. Angles supplement to the same angle, or congruent angles are congruent. What this theorem is saying is, if I have angles supplement to the same angle, so this is angle 1, and let's say angle 1 is 30 degrees, and angle 2 is also going to be 30 degrees. And I have an angle 3. 3 is going to be 150 degrees. Angles supplement to the same angle. So do you see 1 is supplement to 3 and 2 is supplement to 3? If 1 and 2 are both supplement to 3, do you see that those two angles are going to be equal? If they're equal, then they're going to be congruent. Let's take a look at our next theorem. Congruent complements theorem. Angles complement to the same angle or to a congruent angle are congruent. This is the same as the previous one, except I'm dealing with complementary angles this time. So if I have an angle, let's say it's 30 degrees again. Angle 1 is 30 degrees. And then I have angle 2 is also 30 degrees. And then I have it complementary to angle 3, which is 60 degrees. So what it's saying here is angles complement to the same angle. So do you see that 1 is a complement to 60? They add up to 90, don't they? And then 2 is a complement also to the angle 3, because they add up to 90. So then notice here that 1 and 2 are equal. Equal means congruent. Vertical angles theorem. If you have two angles that are vertical angles, then they are congruent. We learned earlier, people, when we have vertical angles, we have two intersecting lines, and they are the non-adjacent angles. So here's angle 1, and here's angle 2. In chapter 1, we learned that they're equal. Well, if they're equal, then they are congruent as well. Our next theorem just states perpendicular lines intersect to form 4 right angles. perpendicular lines form a right angle, one right angle. Well, if this is 90 and this is a straight line, then isn't that side going to be 90? If this was an intersecting line, then this side would be 90, and then that side would be 90. All right angles are congruent. Here's our next theorem. If I have angle A, and it is at a right angle, then you would say it's 90 degrees. If I drew angle B, and it's at a right angle, you would say that is also 90 degrees. Well, if A and B are 90 degrees, then the measure of angle A is equal to the measure of angle B. And if A and B are equal, then A and B are going to be congruent. So I've done like a paragraph proof there. I've explained how that statement is arrived at. Perpendicular lines form congruent adjacent angles. If I have perpendicular lines intersect at a right angle and a right angle. So then this angle will be 90, that angle will be 90. If they're both 90, they're equal. If they're equal, then they're congruent. If two angles are congruent and supplementary, then each angle is a right angle. If I have two angles that are congruent and supplementary, each one of them would be 90 degrees. There's angle A and angle B, and they'd each have to be 90 degrees, which would then make them be right angles. If two congruent angles form a linear pair, okay, so if I'm going to have a linear pair and the two have to be congruent, congruent means equals, so then this is a linear pair means 180, so I need them both equal, so they're both going to be 90 and 90, and since they're both 90 and 90, then they are also then going to be right angles. All right, in this page here, I want you guys on your own. On your own, you need to complete this. I'm not going to take the time right now. As I check your notes, I'll check to see that you've done this correctly. But you need to complete this portion on your own. I'm going to move on to the next part. The next section says, find the measure of each numbered angle and name the theorem that justifies your work. I'm going to have you guys, you don't need to name the theorem here, and you're not going to have to do that in your homework either. So let's take a look at number 1. In number 1, I'm given angle 1 and angle 2. I see that angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair. They're making a straight line. Linear pair, my theorem said that if I have a linear pair, then I'm going to have the two angles be supplementary. And supplementary means that they're going to add to 180. And so what I really need to do here, if I was showing all the details on my test, I would write measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is going to equal 180. Now I'm going to plug in my expressions, x plus 10 plus 3x plus 18 equals 180. Now I need to get my like terms together, get my x's together. That gives me 4x plus 28 equals 180. Go ahead and move your 28 to the other side. 4x equals 180 minus 28 is 152. Go ahead and divide by 4. X equals 38. Now this is not the answer. They're asking you to find angle 1 and angle 2. So now I need to go ahead and find the measure of angle 1 is x plus 10. So I'm going to plug in x. Measure of angle 1 equals 38 plus 10 1 equals 48. And then I need to find the measure of angle 2. Measure of angle 2 is 3x plus 18. Measure of angle 2 equals 3 times 38 plus 10. Need to multiply 3 times 38. 3 times 38 is 114 plus 10. 18, I'm sorry, this is an 18. That's an 18. Measure of angle 2 is 132. Now, as a double checker, guys, you can take and add those two angles together. They're supposed to form a straight line. Do they add up to 180? Yes, they do. So I do have my correct answers here. I'm going to box them in. Now, people, I expect this detailed work on this assignment. You need to make sure you write all the details down or you will not get full credit. Let's take a look at example number 2. You're given 4 to be 2x minus 5 and angle 5 to be 4x minus 13. Here are my two intersecting lines. This is a right angle here, which is going to be 90. So this angle over here, those two angles are vertical angles, so that angle is also going to be 90. To solve this problem, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the measure of angle 4 plus the measure of angle 5 is going to equal 90. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this out of the way. Oops, that's not going to work. Gotta take this out of the way, guys. So now I'm going to plug in my expressions. Angle 4 is 2x minus 5. Angle 5 is 4x minus 13. And that equals 90. Now I'm going to add my like terms together. So I've got my 2x and my 4x. That gets me 6x. My minus 5 and my minus 13 gives me a minus 18 equals 90. I'm going to move my 18 over. 6x equals 108. And then I'm going to divide by 6. So my x ends up being 18. Now I need to go ahead and find my angles for, if you want to draw a line here, I don't know if you guys are tight or not, I am. My measure of angle 4 is 2x minus 5. So I'm going to plug my x in. 4 is 2 times 18 minus 5. Measure of angle 4 equals 2 times 18 is 36 minus 5. So my measure of angle 4 is 31. Now I need to go and find my other angle. Measure of angle 5 is 4x minus 13. Measure of angle 5 is 4 times 18 minus 13. Measure of angle 5. 4 times 18 is 72 minus 13. Measure of angle 5 is 72 minus 13, 59. Okay, and my double checker would be, those two are supposed to add up to 90. So I'm looking. I'm saying, do those add up to 90? They do, so I do have the correct answer here. So I'm going to box my answers in, communicating what my final answer is. So again, people, do you notice here how I've written all the details down? Each one of these problems takes a lot of communication on your mathematics, so make sure you're doing detailed work on your homework and on your test. You guys have a great night, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.